Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Mayor Mike Duggan.
Well, good evening. I hope I get this reception a year from now. Well, thank you very much. As we gather here tonight, there's a lot going right in America. The unemployment rate is the lowest it has been in 5 years. The stock market is over 16,000, creating unprecedented wealth if you happen to be invested in it. But if you drive through most of the neighborhoods in Detroit today, you wouldn't know there's a national recovery, right? I mean, for most of our history, our fortunes were tied to the rest of the country. This is the city that put the world on the road, that created $1 trillion industry, that created the musical sound that swept the country. And we could always count on the fact that our fortunes rose and fell with everybody else. We were the backbone of the middle class. And now you look, and the people of this community see a disconnect. They see parts of the country doing well, parts of even our own city doing well, while others are left behind. And this was the issue that we talked about when I campaigned in those 250 house parties, where people say to me, how did this happen? It doesn't seem fair, and can we turn this around? And the question I get now, most often, almost every day, somebody asks me, aren't you discouraged? You're the mayor of a city that's in bankruptcy. You don't have control over your own destiny. And of course, you're not really the mayor. The emergency manager is in charge, right? And if all that weren't bad enough, our first month in office, we get hit with the heaviest snowfall of any January in recorded history. It could make you discouraged, but if you've been watching the last 7 weeks, and you've been watching both me and my partners in the city council and county clerk, we haven't been the least bit discouraged. You've seen us take on these issues calmly and deal with them honestly. Because here's what I know for sure. The change has started, and the change in Detroit is real. Yeah. For most people, the most obvious change is that the mayor is working with the emergency manager. And that really wasn't an easy decision. When I came in, you had to look at this. I don't like the arrangement that the emergency manager is running the bankruptcy and the police department, but I had a choice to make. And that was, should I take responsibility for the city services that are there, do the best I can, and prepare for the most smooth transition as possible October 1st, when the emergency manager leaves, or should I take the politically easier way and criticize him for the next 9 months? And I gave that a lot of thought, but at the end of the day, I really felt that the people of the city of Detroit were going to be better served if we put aside our differences and sat down and tried to work professionally. And I couldn't be more pleased that my colleagues in the city council reached exactly the same conclusion. It's a change that had to happen. And probably the change that surprises most people is that the mayor and the city council are working together. And that is due to an extraordinary team and the president of the city council, my partner, Brenda Jones. So you've seen in just a few weeks, We have worked together and created a new public lighting authority, a new land bank, a new Department of Neighborhoods, and we've united on legislation in Lansing to deal with the scrap dealers buying the illegal scrap. These are the things we should be working together on. We're not always going to agree, and in a democracy, you shouldn't always agree. But what you are seeing is those conversations being conducted professionally, because beyond anything else, there are two things. We all care deeply about the citizens of Detroit, and we are going to demonstrate that we can run a professional and responsible government so that when the emergency manager's term expires on October 1st, there is no question that the city of Detroit will return to democracy and return the elected officials in charge who were selected by the voters. One thing I think we can all agree on is that Kevin Orr has a very difficult job. And you've seen this week that he presented a plan of adjustment. And as you might expect, when we don't have enough money, the plan of adjustment made pretty much everybody unhappy. And I know the challenges are going to be difficult in court, but I join with the majority of the Detroiters and say to the courts, I hope that every effort will be made to honor the pensions of the men and women who gave their careers to this city. But just as the creditors and the pensioners are not going to be satisfied in what they have, those of us who have to run the city of Detroit aren't going to be satisfied either. If you look at the plan of adjustment, while it sheds debt in the past, it still leaves us responsible in the long run to run a city that had the same problems we started with. We have an obligation to provide city services and repair a deteriorating infrastructure at the same time we're faced with continually declining revenues. And the only way we're going to do that is with professional management working together. And I'm really pleased to say that we have in this new administration, I believe, an outstanding leadership team. And I think it's appropriate now to introduce Detroiters to that team, the people who are running the city of Detroit today and will be running your government when the emergency manager leaves in just a few months down the road. And so if I could introduce them individually, a 25-year veteran of the Detroit Fire Department, our Commissioner Jonathan Jackson. A man who's familiar to everybody in this town, the great police chief, James Craig. The former general counsel of the NAACP and now the corporation counsel for the city of Detroit, Butch Hollowell. A young woman who a week ago was the chief information officer for the city of Louisville and has now been promoted to the CIO of the city of Detroit, Beth Niblock. Our deputy mayor, former police chief, Ike McKinnon. Our chief of staff, former state representative Lisa House. Our chief of operations and former city councilman, Gary Brown. A former federal attorney from the Obama administration, our ethics director, Portia Roberson. The former general manager of the smart bus system, now running DDOT, Dan Dirks. Man who's been in city government for more than 30 years, our Department of Neighborhoods director, Charlie Beckham. And the man who ran the oversight board when Washington, D.C. was under a financial manager and is now our chief financial officer here in the city of Detroit, John Hill. And watching us on remote tonight is our Economic Development Director, Tom Lewan. This is the team that I believe will turn the city around. So, if we're going to do a turnaround, where does this team start? And in my mind, everything starts with a job. That's what you need to deal with crime. That's what you need to deal with blight. But in the city of Detroit, for the 60% of Detroiters who don't have cars, a job means a reliable bus system. Well, how bad is it? We have a 53-year-old veteran who lives on Detroit's west side, who has a job where he works a 12-hour shift, 4 in the afternoon to 4 in the morning, sorting produce for the supermarkets in our region. He rides Line 38, the Plymouth Road bus, from Plymouth and Evergreen, about 5 miles west, to his job in Redford. And he realized very quickly after taking the job that more often than not, by the time the bus got to Evergreen, it was so full, the driver wouldn't stop and let him on. Right? We don't have enough service on the road, something Detroiters are very familiar with. And so 2-3 days in a row, he was passed up, and he found himself in danger of being fired. And so this man did the only thing available to him. He went across the street, and he got on the Plymouth Road bus, and he rode eastbound till it got to the end of the line. And then he waited till it turned around, so he was sure he had a spot, because that's what he needed to do to get to work. But after a couple weeks, he started to get sophisticated. He says, you know, maybe I don't need to go to the end of the line. So as he was riding eastbound, he's watching out the window for a westbound bus that's got some seats. And when he sees one stopped at a light, he leaps out of the bus, dashes across Plymouth Road, pays a second fare, and rides the bus back to Redford Township. This man leaves his home 2 hours early to travel 5 miles. When people want to know why the unemployment rate in the city of Detroit is twice the state and national average, there are a lot of reasons. But our residents often have to face obstacles that people in other communities wouldn't dream of. And it's the job of the leadership in city government to try to eliminate those obstacles, to try to give our residents a chance to participate in what's happening in this country. So how do we do that? Well, Dan Dirk started off with a good first step. They extended about 14 routes late at night, almost till 1 a.m., because we have a lot of people working a 4 to midnight shift, and it allowed them to get a ride back home. But extending the buses late at night are easy. Our problem is, as we all know, the middle of the day. We need 220 buses on the street during the peak times, and on a good day, we put out 180. And on a really cold day, as our citizens know, we don't get out that many. And so, what are we going to do about it? Mr. Dirks has already started by hiring 20 additional mechanics to get them back in the garages and start to fix the buses. This weekend at Cobo Hall at the job fair, we're going to hire another 20 mechanics and another 40 drivers, so we have the staff that we need to provide the service. But that isn't going to solve it by itself, because we have pretty much the oldest fleet in America. The average lifespan of a bus is 12 years. You retire them after 12 years. Our average age is approaching 10 years. We simply don't have the buses to get on the road. This week, I signed a request to the Obama administration, to Transportation Secretary Anthony Fox, to ask them to provide immediate support to get to the city of Detroit 50 new buses. And I'm confident with the help of our friends Don Graves and Gina Petrakis, who are here from the White House every week, we're going to get that done. All right. And I'll tell you how remarkable it is. Normally, you order a new bus, it takes 2 years in this country to get it delivered. But they found a way for us to piggyback on another city's order, and we're going to have these buses on the street this fall. We're going to start to make a difference. But when I say change is immediate, at least for one rider it is. Because yesterday, we added a bus at 3 in the afternoon on Plymouth Road going west to Redford. So we at least got... one group of people getting to their jobs on time. And when we get these buses delivered, we're going to be able to extend that kind of service across the city. But of course, all of the jobs in this region, you can't get to by bus. And what does that mean? We need a car. And what's the single biggest barrier to driving a car, as every Detroiter knows? Car insurance. Right? When I moved from the suburbs to Detroit 2 years ago, our car insurance went from $3,000 to $6,000. We moved less than 15 miles. Okay? It is not justified. It doesn't matter if you have a perfect driving record and never been in an accident. Most Detroiters are paying more a month for car insurance than they are for the car payment itself. And so we've got to eliminate these obstacles. The Detroit City Charter provides that the city of Detroit can start its own insurance company. We have to do a joint feasibility study between the city council and myself. And so we're putting together a team to move on this quickly. We're going to start our own insurance company that we call D-Insurance. And I'm really pleased that my friends Raquel Castaneda-Lopez and Andre Spivey have been joining us in this effort. It's going to take us a while, but we are going to start the process this summer, and we're going to keep going until we get people an affordable car insurance option. And then, of course, it doesn't do you any good to get a ride if there isn't a job to go to. And that's why I was pleased yesterday when the president announced his initiative, the Lightweight and Modern Metals Innovation Institute, approved for the Detroit area, $120 million in Department of Defense investment. And our Deputy Mayor Ike McKinnon joined the president at the White House for the announcement yesterday. It is going to bring this new technology and jobs to this region, and one of the key training centers is at Focus Hope right here in Detroit. They're going to help us create manufacturing jobs here in Detroit when they belong. Our own Detroit Employment Solutions Agency has started a Hire Detroit program with the goal of getting thousands of unemployed Detroiters hired, and already they've tripled the training program from last year to train 3,000 Detroiters for the new jobs that are available today. And Tom Lawand is working on a program in the neighborhoods to create an incubator. We have thousands of small and minority-owned entrepreneurs operating in this city, most of them 1, 2, or 3 employees. We're going to set up incubators in the neighborhoods where we give people access to capital, to mentoring, and to work sites. And we're going to grow the business right here from our own talent, as we've done so many times. And I want to say thank you to Mary Sheffield for her efforts to support us in this initiative. We're not going to succeed until Detroiters growing up in this community start to think to themselves, I don't have to grow up to work for somebody else. I can grow up and be my own boss, start my own business, and that's the culture we're going to try and create. The other thing is, we've got a lot of business booming in the downtown and midtown area, and we're all very grateful for that. And we've got very exciting projects going, the M1 rail and the new hockey arena that are going to be starting soon. And Butch Hollowell and Portia Roberson will be working closely with the private leaders of those projects to make sure every contract and every job that can go to a Detroiter, we get a chance at the first shot at that employment. We're going to make sure these jobs benefit the entire community. If we're going to have equal opportunity, it starts at childhood, or maybe even before childhood. In fact, there isn't anything more we can do to give a child a good start in life than to make sure our mothers carry that baby to full term. Babies who are born prematurely, earlier than 32 weeks, these babies have a much higher risk of having learning disabilities, having trouble in math and reading, having physical development issues, things like lung development that can plague them for years. And yet, in the city of Detroit, 1 in 6 of our babies are now born prematurely, 50% higher than the rate of the community around us. And the frustrating thing is that in the last 3 years, there have been medical breakthroughs in this country that fight premature birth very effectively. A worldwide breakthrough 3 years ago, right here in Detroit at Hutzel Hospital with Dr. Sonia Hassan of Wayne State University, discovered that the use of progesterone can help mothers carry babies to term in a much greater rate. At Yale University, they've got breakthroughs that are showing that we can cut our premature delivery by 30 or 40%. And the problem is, we haven't extended these treatments even in our own community. So we're going to see if we can do something about it. So this spring, Dr. Hassan, along with our public health director, Vern Anthony, and David Cotton from Meridian Health and our partners at DMC and St. John's and Henry Ford are going to roll out a new initiative we're going to call Make Your Date, in which we reach out to the doctors in the hospitals of this region and to the pregnant mothers, bring the latest medical procedures, and make it a point to try to get every baby possible delivered at full term. And of course, if we're going to get the babies a good start, we need early childhood education. Right? We've seen the research. We all know what it says. 4th graders read and do math at a significantly advanced level if they've had a good preschool education at 4 years old. They graduate from high school at higher rates, and yet half the at-risk children in this city are not getting preschool education today. Well, here's a time that we can practice bipartisanship, because Governor Snyder has proposed in this year's budget a $65 million expansion of preschool education, a program that would make available preschool education to every child in this state that needs it, and I will be up in Lansing lobbying with him to make sure this gets passed. When it comes to children, we ought not to have partisan politics. And we are also going to partner with the Obama administration and President Obama's new program called My Brother's Keeper. And I'm going back to the White House tomorrow to join the president. I know, they keep inviting me. To join the president in this announcement. It's something that he's deeply personally committed to, and it's a program where the foundations and government comes together to reach out to every young man of color in this community that wants to work hard and pull themselves out to make sure they can reach their full potential. It's a program I believe deeply in, and I'm going to make sure that Detroit is a center of the My Brother's Keeper program nationally. And as Councilwoman Jenkins tells me, one of our responsibilities for these children is to give them something to do, particularly in the summertime, right? The parks in this city last summer were an embarrassment. All right, we said we had 150 open, but realistically, out of 300 parks, we maintained 25 in a way that were usable. It just wasn't acceptable. And so I'm proud to say, under the leadership of our operations director, Gary Brown, we've managed to redesign the park maintenance system so that this summer we're going to have 150 parks open and well-maintained. It's a step in the right direction. But 150 isn't good enough. We need to do more. And so we've reached out to the clergy and the business community, asking the ministers and the churches in this town to adopt parks. And we've set a goal, and we're on our way to get another 50 parks maintained by the clergy and the businesses in this community, so we get up to 200 parks open for our kids. We'll be announcing that rollout in about 2 weeks, but if anybody wants to help, go to the city website and you can sign up. And it's a time for me now to give a special thanks to Matt Simoncini of the Lear Corporation, who has done a phenomenal job at maintaining our parks, and Jimmy Settles, the UAW vice president, who has just paid, their organization has just paid to put two brand new baseball diamonds in parks in the city of Detroit. This is the kind of support that we need. And while the health of our children is critical, we need to be conscious of the health of everybody. We've had 100,000 uninsured Detroiters in this city. And now, April 1st, everybody is eligible for health care coverage. And I think you're going to see, when the national numbers are announced, that Detroit is doing very well at enrolling our residents. But we've still got, we estimate, another 20,000 people who are eligible for health care who don't have it. And so in March, we are going to redouble our efforts. If you have not enrolled in Obamacare, we will have somebody every day on the main floor of City Hall at the Coleman Young Center. We're opening up at 5 firehouses across the city, enrollment sites on Mondays and Wednesdays. We're also doing it at 3 recreation centers. You can check on the cable TV channel and on the website to see when we are there. But we have got to do this because here's the thing. I spent 9 years in the hospital business. I can't tell you the number of times I saw people crippled by strokes when it could have been prevented with simple blood pressure medication. The number of times I saw people diagnosed with terminal cancer when it could have been prevented if they'd been early for detection. If you are uninsured, you live sicker, you suffer more, and you die earlier. With the Affordable Care Act, there is no reason for you to be uninsured. Please take the time in the month of March to sign up and get the health care coverage that everybody deserves. And when you think about health care in this town, you can't help but think about our EMS service. And we know it's not where we should be. For a city this size, we should have 25 ambulances on the street all the time. And right now, we're struggling to get 15. I want to start by thanking Roger Penske and the business people in this town who donated the 23 vehicles that we do have in operation today. Those vehicles truly have been lifesavers, but we're basically running them 24 hours a day because we don't have enough equipment and we don't have enough drivers. So again, we're taking steps to fix it. This weekend at the job fair, we will be hiring 70 new EMTs, emergency manager technicians, to get them in the vehicles and get in to respond. And with the emergency manager's approval, we've just put in an order for 15 new ambulances that will be here this summer. We're going to have a fleet of 38 vehicles to put 25 in the road. It's the kind of maintenance program that you have in a well-run city, and we're going to finally be here in the city of Detroit. There probably is no area where we've made more progress than in public lighting. You saw how quickly the mayor and the council moved to establish a new lighting authority the first week of January. By the third week of January, we had a new plan in place to roll across this city with brand new LED lights twice as bright as the old sodium lights. And I want to thank my friends Scott Benson and James Tate, who have been out at the public hearings with me in their districts, where we've got the demonstration going. We have with us today the chair of the authority, Dr. Lorna Thomas, and the executive director, Otis Jones. And they are right now putting up 500 new lights a week. It is remarkable to see what they're accomplishing. For years, we've heard we can't get the street lights lit. By the end of this year, more than 50% of the neighborhoods in this city will be fully lit, and by the end of next year, they'll all be lit. These problems are not unsolvable, but never does it stray far from our minds the need to create opportunities for Detroiters. And so when we went out to see the first day the lights were being installed, I was thrilled to meet Ernest Koger, an African-American businessman who started his own company. He's on Greenfield and he has 9 employees. And he's got the contract out there putting up lights every day. We are lighting our neighborhoods with our own residents and our own businesses right here in the city of Detroit, and it's something we need to do more of. And of course, nothing matters more than dealing with the neighborhoods, and the lights are an important step. But we have a lot more to do. We took an important step a few weeks ago when we started to deal with the unfair property tax assessments in this city, right? If you lived in downtown or midtown, your taxes stayed the same or maybe went up. But if you lived in almost any other neighborhood in this city, we dropped your tax rates 5 to 20% because you had not been charged fairly, and we wanted to make it more affordable for you to stay in this community. And I want to thank John Hill, our Chief Financial Officer, for the quick and efficient way he got those new tax bills out. Thank you, John. When I started here 7 weeks ago, the neighborhood strategies were pretty interesting. We had the federal government HUD in our blight program, the State Housing Authority. We had the City Building Safety and Engineering Department. We had the Blight Task Force. We had the Blight Authority. We had a land czar. We had a state land bank. We had a city land bank. And we had a county land bank. Every one of them with good ideas, and every one of them going a different direction. You go through the neighborhoods and you wonder why we're not getting anywhere. But we worked together quickly. City Council and the mayor established a new land bank. Sean Donovan, the HUD director, came to town from Washington and got behind our program, said he was going to work with us. Scott Woolsey, the State Housing Authority director, said, I'll step back from the state land bank. You're on the right track. And we have created a single program. And I promised to do this in the campaign, and I'm happy to tell you tonight that we've done it. Because as I said at the forums all during the campaign, when something goes wrong in your neighborhood, who do you call? There's been 14 different phone numbers and 14 different agencies. Well, tonight, we have one single Department of Neighborhoods headed by Charlie Beckham, one entity that's going to do this. And I promised you that the Department of Neighborhoods will be located in the neighborhood. And so we have now hired for each of the city council districts a district manager and a deputy district manager who will be placed in your community, and they will have one charge: work with the block clubs and the neighborhood groups and the churches to fight blight. They're not going to do anything else. They're going to be in your neighborhood, working with your neighborhood, and I'd like to ask our district managers and their teams to please stand up. And thank you. And just as we centralized the blight fighting, we're centralizing the demolition in the Detroit Land Bank. And we're pulling together all of the 70,000 parcels that were been in the state and the county and the city coming together in one place, all the different demolition funds and all the nuisance abatement programs, and concentrating them in one location so there's one stop. And when we did it, you know what we found? We've got $16 million in fire escrow funds from houses that have burned, and the insurance company paid the money to the city to take the house down. But oftentimes, the insurance company would pay us $5,000, and the demolition would cost $7,000. So what did we do? We left the house there, and we left the money in the bank account until it grew to $16 million. How many neighborhoods in this city do we have a solid block and one burned out house that's depressing the values of everybody else in that community? And so the land bank is going to start to move immediately to take the $16 million in fire escrow funds and start to roll through this community and take down those burned houses and start to bring those blocks back. And as everybody's heard me say 100 times in the campaign trail, it is not enough to demolish our houses. There are a lot of houses in this city that are vacant, that are perfectly solid. They are good homes. If we are going to build the population of the city, we're going to have to move people in. And when I was in the prosecutor's office, we filed suit against the owners of those abandoned houses. We took those houses, and we sold them on the internet like eBay. We moved in families who wanted to live there. Well, now I'm happy to say that with Beth Niblock coming back up from Louisville, we're going to reopen that auction site. And starting in April, we are going to start to move through the city, neighborhood by neighborhood, and we are going to sue the owners of the abandoned houses again. We're going to work with you in the community. We're going to knock down the ones we can't save, and we're going to move people into the ones we can. And we now have to add another piece of the program, one that I'm really glad to have to add. When I was in the prosecutor's office, we had a drug house program. There were so many drug raids, and we had the same houses raided 5 and 6 times, with the police risking their lives each time, that we started a program that after the first time the drug house was raided, we'd send a notice to the landlord, say if it happens again, we're taking the house. The second time we went in and seized the house and we sold it to a family. In the last few months, we have a need to start that program again because we got a police chief who's raiding 35 houses a week. And we're going to work with Chief Craig to send out that notice every single raid so his officers don't have to hit the houses more than once. We can take back these neighborhoods. And I have to say one more thank you on the Blight Task Force, because in order to start this process, we have 377,000 parcels of land in this city. And I thought it was going to take us a year to go through and survey them all to develop a strategy. But the Blight Task Force, Dan Gilbert, Glenda Price, Linda Smith, got out there on their own, and they have created a Star Wars computer system. They have driven every single parcel in this city. They've taken pictures. We know if it's vacant. We know who the owner is. We know if it's tax delinquent. They have shortened this process by a year, and everybody in this city owes them a debt of gratitude. Thank you very much for what you've done. And as we go and try to fix up these houses, we're going to have another obstacle. The scrappers, right? They are tearing this city apart. We have had school buildings shut down because they pulled out power lines just in the last couple weeks. We got street lights in entire neighborhoods out because they took the copper. We have got houses that people have tried to repair and the scrappers have come in and pulled it out. 5,000 cases a year. But we know that they're selling to a handful of scrapyards. And the same people are going to the same scrapyards over and over. And so I'm going to ask everyone to join with Council President Jones and me, and Lisa House, who's leading the effort, and urge the state legislature to move immediately on House Bill 4593 to start to deal with these unsavory scrapyard owners. And here's what the bill does. It says 2 things. If somebody comes into your scrapyard with a catalytic converter, with an air conditioning unit, or with copper wire, you can take it, but you have to either mail them a check to an address, or hold that payment for 3 days. Those are the requirements. Nearly half the states in America have this restriction. And so we want to make sure they're not selling on phony IDs, which they are. Make them mail the check to a real house. And we have one other requirement. Just for catalytic converters, air conditioners, or copper wire, you have to take a picture with a clear image of the seller. Seems reasonable, right? The scrapyard owners are fighting us tooth and nail in Lansing, which tells you everything you need to know. But here's another case where I hope bipartisanship prevails, because this is something where we've got leaders on both the Democratic and Republican side. In the House of Representatives, Paul Muxloe is a Republican, is teamed up with a Democrat from Detroit, Rashida Tlaib. And on the, go ahead, you can clap for him. And on the Senate side, Republican Senator Mike Colwell and Senator Virgil Smith from Detroit are teamed up. We've had great support from the Republican Senate Majority Leader Randy Richardville and the Speaker of the House, Chase Bolger. We have got good people on both sides, but so far we've been blocked. And so I'll be spending a lot of time in Lansing. But as everybody here knows, we cannot rebuild these houses if the scrappers are allowed to tear them back down. And it's incumbent on all of us to do everything we can to get 4593 passed as soon as possible. As I close tonight, I have one last group to thank, probably the most important group. And that's the 9,000 men and women who work for the city of Detroit today. All right? Many of them you see on the street, the police officers who have stepped up their law enforcement activities very much in recent months, the firefighters who are courageously going into blaze after blaze, the EMS workers working 12-hour shifts in the most difficult of circumstances, all after they've taken a 10% pay cut, had their health care costs increased, and are dealing with an uncertain pension situation. And they still continue to go out and deliver us great service. And you've seen in the middle of the snowstorms and the blizzards, our snowplow operators and our garbage truck drivers working 24 hours a day. We've been going around the clock, and the mechanics and the supervisors supporting them have been doing the same. It just seems like you're about to get a break, and another bunch of snow comes down. They've done it without complaining. They've done it all winter, and I want to say thank you to them. But I've gotten to see another side of the employees. I've been holding employee forums. In fact, I've been in this room a number of times where I just ask the employees, what's going on? What ideas do you have? Because we've been hearing how our employees are not delivering good service, they don't care and the like. And I have been deeply impressed with what I found. The employees aren't in denial. They know we're delivering poor city services. They know what's being said about them, and they want to change more than anybody. And here's the thing I know for sure. The greatest experts in how we improve our service are not the consultants we hire, it's the men and women doing the job every day. And so we are now creating a new culture. And I wish you could hear them, because in these meetings, we've had employees give us very good strategies for how we're going to cut the ambulance response time, how we're going to speed up vehicle repairs by improving the parts purchases, how we can speed up the collection of trash on vacant lots. They want to be a part of the solution, and to every one of those employees, I'm going to tell you this. Every place I've been, the turnaround has been driven by the men and women of the organization. And in this administration, you are going to have leadership that listens to you and involves you, because we need to all work together to give our residents the kind of service they deserve. So that's what I've been doing the last 7 weeks. Along with my partners here up on City Council and County Clerk, Janice Winfrey. I was in the county for a long time. City Clerk Janice Winfrey. And so, when I stood here on the inaugural day, I said to the people of Detroit, give us 6 months. Let us prove to you that we can make city government work. I didn't mean that we're going to solve all the problems in 6 months. It's going to be a long, hard fight. But I did believe that we could demonstrate to you in that time that the mayor and the council could work together professionally, and we could take on these problems, and we could start to make a difference. And so, after 7 weeks, I'll report this to you here tonight, what I believe for sure. The change has started. The change is real. And Detroit is not nearly as far away from turning around as most people think. Thank you all very much. All right?